Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tip. My name is Julian, and today we're going to be talking about players that you can add to your team to help you win Week 11 of the fantasy hockey season. Before we get started, guys, please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and follow me on Twitter. I would really appreciate the support. Without further ado, guys, let's jump into a preview for the schedule for next week. So next week, guys, there is one team that only plays 2 games, and that is the St. Louis Blues. So if you have some low ownership Blues like Jordan Carew, you can easily drop them and then pick them up later in the week because Blues only play on Saturday and Friday. So there's no reason to have Blues in your lineup earlier in the week. So interestingly, guys, next week, every single night is an off night except for Thursday and Saturday. So don't look too much into off night because you'll probably have room on pretty much every single night. But if you do want to pick up some off night players from teams that have those off nights, well, Calgary, Toronto, and Winnipeg each have 4 off nights and each play on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Now, if you see a little schedule icon with the 4 inside, it means that the player plays on either Calgary, Toronto, or Winnipeg and has 4 off nights. Without further ado, guys, let's jump right into some forward options that you can add to your team. First on the list, guys, is Rope against Dallas Stars, 48% owned, and over his last 3 games, he has 6 points, 3 goals, and 3 assists. Yeah, he's been kind of a permanent injury, game time decision all year, but he seems to be playing a little bit more now and is playing really well when he does play. Next on the list, guys, is Jaden Schwartz, St. Louis Blues, 44% owned, and I would actually wait to pick him up until Friday because he doesn't play until then, but he makes for a pretty good ad for your team. He plays on a very good line in St. Louis. Next is Matt Zuccarello, Minnesota Wild, 40% owned, and I'm still high on him. I know he's had a couple of bad games, but he's still on that Minnesota Wild top line and top power play, so the opportunities are there, and he is a good player. Next is Paul Stastny, Winnipeg Jets, 27% owned, and he's there because he plays with Scheifele and Wheeler on the top line. He's also on the top power play, and I put him on this list because Winnipeg Jets have those off nights this week, so he makes for a very good add to your team. Next on the list, guys, is Jonathan Drouin, Montreal Canadiens, 19% owned, and he actually leads the Canadiens in assists this year. Doesn't get a whole lot of goals, but now that Montreal is going to be playing again, he's a pretty good add to your team. Next is Michael Backlund, Calgary Flames, 19% owned, and I added him as well for those off nights that Calgary has. Calgary has actually put their original lines from last season back together, so that top line is Gaudreau, Monahan, and Lindholm again, and their second line is now centered by Michael Backlund, which makes him a lot more valuable than he was early in the season. Next is Eeli Tolvanen, Nashville Predators, 19% owned, and he's playing top line, top power play for Nashville. I know Nashville's not the greatest team in the world, but he's producing and he's actually looking really, really good. He makes for a pretty good ad. Next is Kevin Labanc, San Jose Sharks, 17% owned. He's also playing top line, top power play with Evander Kane. Can't really go wrong there. I mean, San Jose is not the best team in the world, but he is still producing. Next is Jesper Bratt, New Jersey Devils, 11% owned. And prior to last game, he was riding a 6-game point streak. As long as he stays hot, guys, you can add him to your team and stream him. As soon as he slows down, I would drop him. Next is Oliver Wahlstrom, New York Islanders, 11% owned, and he's currently riding a 5-game point streak and has 7 points in his last 7 games. The ice time isn't there, but he's getting a good amount of power play time, which is kind of, compensating for that, and he is putting up points. So as long as he is, guys, you can have him on your team. Next is Jason Robertson, Dallas Stars, 11% owned, and he's playing top line, top power play for the Dallas Stars, and he's been producing for the last few weeks now. I'm surprised he's not higher owned. He's actually played really, really well, and as long as he keeps getting that deployment, there's no reason he shouldn't be on a lot more teams. Next is Wayne Simmons, Toronto Maple Leafs, 8% owned, and I only have him on this list for the off nights this week. I would not keep him past this week, but he is playing with Matthews and Marner on both the top line and the top power play, so it doesn't hurt. He can definitely put up some points. The same thing goes with the next guy on this list, Andrew Mangiapane, Calgary Flames, 7% owned. He hasn't really been putting up the points lately, but he is on the second line right now, and he's got that nice off-night schedule, so he's definitely someone you can consider. Next is Travis Zajac, New Jersey Devils, 5% owned. And he kind of cooled down the last couple games, but he still is getting the ice time, the power play time. So, if you're really desperate and in a deep league, Zajac is actually a pretty decent ad. And last but not least is Jared McCann, Pittsburgh Penguins 4% owned. And now that both Malkin and Kapanen are down with injuries, Jared McCann's actually getting some top power play time in Pittsburgh. Now, if you follow me on Twitter, you got some really, really good advice to pick him up for that back-to-back set against Buffalo. He managed to get 2 goals and an assist, so that probably really helped you this week. So if you're not following me on Twitter, go ahead and follow me at Fantasy Tip because I do give out some good advice when I see some. Now, Jared McCann is someone that you could probably hold on to just because of that top power play time, and he's also the second line center right now. So, the opportunities are there, and in deep leagues, there's probably no better options. Next is Josh Morrissey, Winnipeg Jets, 50% owned, and this is the last week I'm going to be able to have him on this list because he's probably going to be over 50% owned in the future. He's getting that top power play time in Winnipeg, and he's shooting a lot more than he was earlier in the season, which makes him a lot more valuable. Next is Matt Grzelcyk, Boston Bruins, 45% owned, and he's manning that top power play in Boston. He's shooting a lot, and he's looking pretty good. Add him before you can't anymore. Next is Matisse Ekholm, Nashville Predators, 45% owned. Ekholm's still doing pretty decently, even though Yossi is back now. And, likely he's going to be traded at the deadline. So maybe he'll be traded to someone who's going to use him, put him on their top power play or something, and he might gain even more value. We'll have to see. Next on the list, guys, are 3 Minnesota Wild defensemen, Matt Dumba, Jonas Brodin, and Jared Spurgeon. And I think they all have some pretty decent value. I don't think any of them are crazy valuable. Probably the highest value one is Matt Dumba. But, I think they all deserve to be owned probably just a little bit more than they are now because Brodin's back on that top power play. Dumba's a guy who's really good all around. And Spurgeon's getting some power play time too, and he's starting to turn the season around just a little bit. Ryan Suter is not on this list because I really don't like his peripherals, and he's not getting a lot of points. Suter is probably a drop for me. If you have to drop Ryan Suter, you probably can. Next is Ty Smith, New Jersey Devils, 19% owned. He's got 4 points over his last 4 games, and he is now back on New Jersey's top power play, which makes him pretty valuable. Go ahead and add Ty Smith to your team. Next is Adam Boquist, Chicago Blackhawks, 12% owned. I get that he's a little bit streaky, but he is still manning that Chicago top power play, and he could go off at any time. He's kind of boom or bust any given day because if that Chicago power play goes off, Patrick Kane scores a couple, well, Boquist is going to be very, very valuable. Next is Vince Dunn, St. Louis Blues, 9% owned, and he's actually getting a lot of power play time now. I'm not sure exactly why, but he is, which makes him pretty valuable. Again, I'm going to remind you that St. Louis doesn't play till Friday, so if you are going to pick up Vince Dunn, wait until Friday to do so. Next is Shane Gostisbehere, Philadelphia Flyers, 8% owned, and sometimes he's not in Philly's lineup at all. So when he isn't, you can drop him, but when he's added to the lineup, he gets a lot of power play time. So as long as he's playing, he's someone that you can add for any given night and can potentially put up some points. Next is Noah Hannafin, Calgary Flames, 5% owned, and Rasmus Andersson had not been playing well at all, so now Hannafin is actually manning that top power play in Calgary, making him pretty valuable, especially this week, given the off-night schedule. And last but not least is Dante Fabro, Nashville Predators, 2% owned, and he's getting a good amount of power play time, and he's putting up some decent peripherals, and he's actually putting up some points as well. He's going to get even more valuable once Matisse Ekholm gets traded at the deadline. Jumping into some goalies now. First on the list, guys, is Mackenzie Blackwood, New Jersey Devils, 48% owned. And I get it, New Jersey is not the best team in the world, but Blackwood's actually a really, really good goalie. He had, a really bad stretch at one point, but he's a really good goalie overall. And if you do need a goalie desperately, well, Blackwood's going to get pretty much all the starts in New Jersey. Next is Elvis Merzlikins, Columbus Blue Jackets, 45% owned. I get that his high danger save percentage is terrible, but he is still going to get about half the starts in Columbus, and Columbus isn't the worst team in the world. So again, if you really need a goalie and Merzlikins available, well, he's going to get half the starts. So, at least you're going to get some starts. Next is Alex Nedeljkovic, Carolina Hurricanes, 44% owned, and I keep having him on both my drop lists and ad lists. I get this, guys, but Mrazek is going to be back really, really soon. So as soon as Mrazek is back, Nedeljkovic doesn't really have any value anymore. He probably won't get any games, but until that point, guys, Nedeljkovic makes for a good ad. Next, I didn't think I'd be recommending this guy, but it's Martin Jones, San Jose Sharks, 31% owned. And, Friday night he really sucked, but the games prior to that, he's actually played really, really well, a lot better than Devin Dubnyk, so he should get the vast majority of the starts in San Jose. So if you're desperate, you need a goalie that's going to start, 2/3 of the games, well, Martin Jones is probably going to get that right now. Next is Jake Ottinger, Dallas Stars, 26% owned, and Dallas goalie starting decisions don't make any sense at all. They started him a whole bunch of games, and then out of nowhere they started Khudobin, back-to-backs, and then they started Khudobin again. So it's hard to predict who the stars are going to be starting on any given day, but Ottinger should get, about half the starts until Ben Bishop comes back, at which point he won't get any starts at all, but that may not be till mid or end of April. Next are the Los Angeles Kings goalies, Cal Peterson and Jonathan Quick, 26% and 20% owned. And last week they didn't have a great schedule. They only had 2 games, so they only got 1 game each, but they are splitting the starts, so LA has a pretty decent schedule this week, so they'll each get 2 starts. I much prefer Peterson over Quick just because he is the better goalie if you had to choose. Next is Linus Ullmark, Buffalo Sabres, 18% owned. And I get that he's a Nets for Buffalo, and Buffalo is not a very good team. But Ullmark's actually a pretty good goalie, so if anyone can turn that team around, it is Ullmark. If you're desperate for goalie starts, Ullmark is the guy for you. Next is Philip Gustafsson, Ottawa Senators, 9% owned. And I don't really recommend him, but if you're really desperate for goalie starts, Gustafsson is getting the starts in Ottawa right now. Next, Adin Hill, Arizona Coyotes, 7% owned. And both Kemper and Ronta are injured right now. So Hill is getting the starts by default, and he's actually a pretty decent goalie. He's better than most, number 3 goalies just because he's been forced into this situation in the past. So he's kind of used to it. And look for him to get a lot of the starts until Kemper comes back. All right, guys, you've reached the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. I really appreciate it. Please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a comment, ask me a fantasy hockey related question. I'll be happy to answer you. Until next time, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.